I'm Johanna.
I'm Sherilyn.
I'm Lydia.
And I'm Becca.
And that's our camera person, Megan. And today we'll be covering the Haitian Revolution.
Hi, and welcome to this section of Smash Course World History. Thank you, stand by, don't eat the globe. I'm Lydia Schinner, and today we're going to be talking about the very beginning of a revolution that involved way too many countries getting in where their business wasn't. The Haitian Revolution. Let's start off really, really basic. Before Haiti became the country we know today, an independent nation with businesses other than trafficking human beings, it was the French colony of Saint-Domingue, which before even that was called Haiti by the natives, the Taino. And yes, I'm probably butchering my French and native Haitian for the rest of the video, but I'm here for information, not for linguistics. Alright, in 1492, the Spanish explorer Christopher sailed the ocean blue. Columbus made his way to the island that modern Haiti rests on, which he called Hispaniola, in April 1492. Incidentally, the island translates strictly to the Spanish island. Way to go on original names, guys! Leaving behind 39 of his sailors, who founded the settlement of La Navidad, Columbus and his ship left the island. However, as we all should know, leaving Europeans on an island with a bustling indigenous population almost never goes well. And I swear I'm not exaggerating. Be because of physical, tangible weapons, or because of something almost worse that we can't actually get our fingers on, disease. Carrying endemic Eurasian diseases that the natives had no natural immunity to, but the Europeans themselves did, the first recorded smallpox outbreak in the Americas soon occurred in 1507. Aside from a now massive die-off, things continued to actually get worse, with the introduction by Spanish sailors of their encomienda system, a caste-like strict social hierarchy that basically stuck indigenous peoples at the very, very bottom of the proverbial totem pole. As such, they were forced to work on the island's new gold mines and sugar plantations. Later, in 1512, Spain passed the Law of Burgos, which specifically forbade the maltreatment of native populations in Spanish settlements and the colonies, but only going so far as to put workers on specific plantations and colonies, which wasn't really much help of anyone. This next section in the island's history deals with something a lot of little kids want to be for Halloween, and a cultural fascination with lawbreakers of the high seas. Yeah, I'm talking about pirates.
Miss Schinner, what type of pirates?
Do I have to say, fine, pirates of the Caribbean? Okay, so there were pirates in Hispaniola in the 16th century, but the truth is a bit less exciting than Johnny Depp, Keira Knightley, and Orlando Bloom dashing across your screen of choice. In actuality, Hispaniola did become a veritable pirate haven in the early colonial era, specifically for another country that enters the scene about now and is pretty important, France. The French buccaneers, yes, that's what they were called, not me trying to sound cool, took control of the northern third of Hispaniola. Eventually, the French, that were here second, and the Spanish, which were here first, would settle any and all disputes with the 1697 Treaty of Ryswick, dividing the island into a French chunk and a Spanish chunk. Receiving the western third of the island, the French named it Saint-Domingue and promptly set up a colony, which by 1790 would have 40,000 settlers. Oh yeah, and that's not including slaves, which is actually really, really important. The fact that slaves in the colony outnumbered their white counterparts 10 to 1. As you can imagine, that's gonna create some kind of big problems. Big problem-making, history kind of changing, nothing will ever be the same, even if it seems like it will, sort of problem.
Hey! Hello! I'm Johanna Flahiff, and I will be focusing on the symptomatic stage of the Haitian Revolution. As Lydia mentioned, there were 10 slaves to every one slave owner. Because of this, many of the slaves escaped and banded together. In 1758, violence was common, especially between the runaway slaves and their old owners. Many escaped slaves lived on the land around the plantations and survived on what they could steal from their old masters. However, some ran away and joined into the towns to blend in with the freed slaves. The escaped slaves, known as Maroons, formed groups in the wood, and together they raided the many slave-owning sugar plantations. Soon the groups of runaways grew larger as more and more slaves fled the surrounding sugar plantations. Some of the ex-slaves groups reached up to 1,000 people. With this newfound strength in numbers, they were able to increase the number of hit-and-run attacks they completed on the sugar plantations. However, they lacked organization, and because of this, they weren't able to accomplish as much as they could have. Their organization, however, soon came in the form of a man known as Francois Mackandal. Francois Mackandal was the most famous of the Maroon leaders. He created a poison from the island herbs and then spread it to the slaves on the plantations to give to their slave owners. He also led the Maroons in raiding plantations at night, torturing the property, and killing the owners. Mackandal was captured and burned alive on a stake in 1758 in the public square of Cap Francois, now Cap Haitian. Large armored Maroon bands persisted in raiding and torching plantations even after his death. It has been said that Maroons' attacks were the beginning of the revolt against the French rule in the slave system. The arrangement between the whites and the gens de couleur to preserve the stability of the slaveholding system was very unstable. The gens de couleur desired more than the agreement gave them. They desired equality and power. The events in the French Revolution weakened and eventually broke this agreement. The National Assembly in Paris granted full rights, for example, voting, to the gens de couleur, in a document known as the Rights of Man, and they required Saint-Domingue to honor it. However, Saint-Domingue refused to honor these new rights, and this is what led to the first rebellion of the mulattoes. In 1790, the first mulatto rebellion was led by Vincent I don't know how to say his name.
Vincent Augier.
Like that guy. He led the first mulatto rebellion in 1790. The French militia used a corps of black volunteers to fight for them, effectively using the tight tensions between the mulattoes and the blacks. Even though they were defeated by the French, the mulatto rebellion was seen as the first sign of broader unrest in Saint-Domingue.
Hi, I'm John Bell, and I'm going to be covering the crisis stage of the Haitian Revolution on Smash Course. Now, the Haitian Revolution was split into kind of two small revolutions. The first was to end slavery and free all the slaves, and the second revolution was to be independent from France. So overall, they kind of made the one big Haitian Revolution. Now, the beginning of this, to free the slaves, was all due mainly on the French Revolution and a document they had called the Rights of Man. And actually, everything was pretty peaceful until 1789, when the unrest started from the Rights of Man. Now, it wasn't until August of 1791, though, that the slave revolt started, and it was led by Toussaint Louverture, who was a former slave himself. Now, he turned a group of just slaves into a massive army that could withstand attacks. The Spanish actually supported the slaves in the revolt in hopes that it would weaken the French, so the Spanish could take over part of the French land. And the Spanish supported the slaves so much that Louverture even became an officer in the Spanish military. Now, in October of 1793, the British invaded Saint-Domingue in hopes that their presence there would fear the slaves, because they feared that if the slaves were successful, it would cause the slaves in their nearby colonies to rebel with them. So at this point, we have the French there, we have the Spanish there, we have the British there, and then we have the slaves and basically all the other colony members. It's getting a pretty crowded place right now. Okay, so the British were there and they invaded, but it still wasn't successful. After many battles of the many different people there and many deaths and loss on both sides, the slaves were freed on February 4th of 1794. Now, this granted full French citizenship to every single slave in the French Caribbean. So, even after the slave revolt, the slaves, or I guess they were now French citizens, still worked on the plantations. The only difference was they were paid a wage. Now, after the slaves were freed, there was a civil war due to some land division issues between Louverture and Regard, who didn't want to give up a southern state. That was all figured out after another small war. Then you get into the second phase of the revolution, which was to be freed from the French, because even through the Civil War and all this freedom, they are still part of French. And in 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte, he seized control of France. And, he was like, I am going to reconstruct the French Empire in North America. I can do this. And he had one small issue, though. He didn't have any resources or money. So his way to get money was to go back to Saint-Domingue, which was once it's where the French got all their money from. It's their most
lucrative colony, and he was like, I'm going to send 40,000 soldiers led by my brother-in-law Leclerc, and they're going to capture Louverture and send him back to France, and he'll be in prison. I'm going to reinforce slavery, and I'm going to reinforce French rule. So that's what he did. He sent the 40,000 slaves, or the 40,000 soldiers, led by his brother-in-law to Saint-Domingue. Now, the French soldiers got there, and things were actually pretty peaceful. You know, the natives were like, hi, how are you doing? And it was all good. But then one day, the French soldiers were like, we're going to take your guns away now, just if you could hand them over. And that didn't sit too well with the native population. And so that's when kind of a war started again. And the French got really violent really quick. They executed both men and women, and they even imported man-eating dogs. Yeah, man-eating dogs. I didn't even know those existed. So, after that, the slaves and the native people, so I guess they weren't slaves anymore, but they had an ally on their side they didn't know about, which was yellow fever. Yellow fever killed thousands and thousands of soldiers, along with the leader Leclerc himself. And after the thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths, Napoleon realized that this just wasn't going to work. So he called his troops back home and gave up his dream of his North American empire. So sad, right? Now, he sent 40,000 soldiers over there. The soldiers that returned were only 8,000. The rest were killed or died of disease. And so after that, and Napoleon gave up his dream, he sold what is today known as Louisiana to Thomas Jefferson. So we in America can thank all the Haitian people at that time for giving us Louisiana. I think we should owe them a round of applause. Yep. Great. Okay. On January 1st, 1804, Haiti was freed from France.
And now we are free of you, Gerald. You're out of time. Goodbye. Hello, I'm Rebecca Legend. Now we'll be learning about the recovery stage of the very confusing Haitian Revolution. During this time, which was about 1803, getting the new republic up and running required a lot of work. After Toussaint was taken away by Leclerc, Napoleon's closest friend, he was put into a prison called Fort de Joux in the mountains near the Swiss border. There, Toussaint was interrogated and asked with increasing urgency where he'd hidden the treasure he'd stolen and what secrets he'd sold to England. Of course, Toussaint had no idea what they were talking about. He managed to write a letter to Napoleon asking for a fair trial. He received no reply and died 1 year later. Speaking of Napoleon, we have it in the letter. I'm going to put it in the compartment. Thank you, Stan. A horse. How fitting. Dear Napoleon, within this letter I will be addressing your faults, of which you have many. One of these is your horse riding. You are an atrocious rider, and, as was said by your fellow servicemen, you bounced along on your horse like a sack of potatoes slung across a donkey. When compared to Toussaint by your wife, you, having lots of racial prejudice, couldn't believe that anyone could have your genius, especially not a former African slave. Also, after the French people overthrew their monarchy in favor of democracy, you made yourself Emperor of France without a vote, completely going against their new idea of leadership. Lastly, at your height of 5'6", you were smaller than most men, especially for being an army commander of a vast country such as France. So why you, Napoleon? Why are you leader of France? Meanwhile, with Toussaint in prison, no one was leading the revolution. Chaos ensued, and during this time, a new ruler broke out on both sides. The leader of the French army, Leclerc, died of yellow fever, and shortly after was replaced by General de Rochambeau, who promptly began a brutal massacre of black civilians, of which the previous leader, Leclerc, would never have consented to. The massacre was during the summer, and many mosquitoes were out transferring the famed yellow fever to the French army. There was a huge decline in the French army, and many retreated. After the French changed their leadership, so did the African slaves. Toussaint was replaced by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and the French leader Rochambeau began his massacre. The African leader felt that he needed to top that, so he began a brutal slaughter of all the remaining whites on the island. As the war got increasingly worse for the French, Napoleon decided the war wasn't worth fighting. He now wanted to fight England and decided he had wasted enough time and money fighting for Saint-Domingue. This decided the end of the war between France and Saint Dominique. 1 year later, in 1804, Saint Dominique was renamed Haiti and deemed a republic. In 1807, Haiti divided into two parts, the Republic of Haiti and the Kingdom of Haiti, the kingdom being a monarchy and the republic being a democracy. The United States didn't recognize Haiti as independent until 1862.
And that's the overly complicated, too many countries involved Haitian Revolution.
Welcome to Crash Course, everyone.
Knocking up.
Haiti, it's right there.
Oh wait, no.
That's Egypt.
Saint Domingue.
Megan, can you sit up for a second? Why? Because I can't remember where I stuck my bracelet.
It was over here.
Yeah, I saw it on the table over
No, I
there.
think I set it on the chair and then I can't remember.
I don't feel it though.
Please.
Final translation and
Oh, wait, here it is.
pronunciation going
It's
on right
Saint
now. Wait, Saint
I've got
Domingue.
this on
Whoa. Wait, Saint Domingue.
No, Saint Domingue.
It's Saint Domingue. You heard it here first, people, whether it's recorded or not. It's Saint Domingue.
Okay, Saint
Thank you,
Domingue.
pronouncehow.com.
There she is. Who put the squiggly line in there?
That's really cool.
What?
The squiggly thing on the bottom of Francois where the
It's not a Q or
thing.
grav. Oh, what is it called?
Megan's thinking French,
No,
can you tell?
circumflex is that one.
What?
It's one of those squiggly line thingamajigs.
You can just be like, shut up, and you'll be like, what? And you'll like slide out of the chair like,
I'm fine.
Bouncy ball. Yeah, really go.
Why are you bored? Aren't you at Megan's?
You're bored?
Like, thinking about your body declare.
What is that? What? Uh-oh.
That's my dad.
Megan, you're like, oh.
Into the door.
Say hi, Eddie.
Sands through the hourglass. These are the days of my life. They're...
Say hi. Say bye.
Bye.